Mrs. Anping Marquis unexpectedly trampled my family's green seedlings on her horse while she was playing, and compensated us with 10 taels of silver. My mother was still happily sewing new clothes for me during the day, but at night, she was killed by an outlaw. I knelt down and kowtowed in front of my parents' graves, then resolutely walked into the rectory. I had only one wish, and that was to serve only Marquis Anping. The day I learned that Marquis Anping had come to Mansion Yard, I slipped 10 taels of silver to Turtle Master, the same 10 taels rewarded by the nobleman. Outside the window, when the clapper sounded 3 times, Mr. Turtle really helped the Anping Hou into my room. After he helped Anping Hou onto the soft couch, he smiled at me and exited. After I covered the door of my room, I extinguished the incense that had been burning for a while. Only then did I half-fade my clothes and leaned on Anping Hou's arms. Room full of warm fragrance, a night of absurdity. When Anping Hou woke up, I was soft into a puddle of water lying in his arms. The capital is known to everyone, Anping Hou and his wife childhood sweethearts, in addition to Mrs. House without concubines. Weekdays to Spring Courtyard is also only eat some wine, never spend the night. Anping Hou's first reaction when he woke up was to kick me away. I fell off the bed and hit my head on the corner of the bed. Blood immediately flowed down my forehead. Lost my eyes. Everything I looked at was red. I didn't bother to wipe it off and choked on my red eyes. It's because Zhao Niang doesn't know how to be shameless and covets Marquis. Last night she even made a mistake and didn't refuse. It is only right that the Marquis should be angry. The Marquis face stagnated in anger, and after exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, he slightly opened his lips. Before he could speak, Mama Liao barged in. Her willowy eyebrows went up, and the fat and powder on her face fluttered down. She kicked me to the ground, which led her to apologize to Marquis Anping in a loud voice. Marquis, Zhao Niang doesn't know any better. How dare she think of Marquis? I'll lock her up and punish her properly. 1 by 2, it was as if the matter of serving Marquis Anping was treated like a flooding beast. Undoubtedly, they were afraid of his jealous wife. Marquis Anping's face was so dark and heavy that it could drip water. He lightly grunted and got out of bed to help me out before he said to Mama Liao, "Could it be that this Marquis has honored her and made a mistake? I am very satisfied with her. Serve her well." As soon as the words fell, he took out an ingot of gold from his pocket and threw it into Liao's mother's arms. Liao's mother was so happy that she bowed and said yes again and again. Mama Liao once asked me, "Although you have some good looks, the friendship between the Marquis and the lady is incomparable to others." I gently shook my head and said to her with a smile, "No matter how much you like a dish, you will get tired of eating it every day. Besides, if someone doesn't let you taste the side, won't you be angry?" Since that day, Marquis Anping never came to Mansion Yuan. Inevitably, Mama Liao got a little anxious and said to me, "You told me that you could enter the Anping Marquis residence, otherwise I wouldn't have accompanied you in a play. Marquis Anping hasn't come for the past few days. I'm afraid he hasn't forgotten about you, right?" I reclined on the soft couch, poured a cup of tea for Mama Liao, and then said without hesitation, "What's the hurry? It's time to come." Liao's mom was still about to ask when the building became noisy. Liao mother kicked open the door of the room. "Will be angry on the door," she shouted and said, "What noise? What time is it? It's not time to open for business yet. Who are you?" Before she could finish her words, Mama Liao was jerked aside by a granny like a goose by the throat. I lightly placed the teacup on the table and straightened my lapel before I got up and greeted them in a pretense of panic. A sound of breaking wind came. I dodged out of the way as the soft whip lashed against the window ledge, sending wood shavings flying. I froze in place, a bean-sized teardrop rolling down my cheek. The richly dressed lady kicked me in the crook of my leg. With a thud, I fell straight to the ground on both knees. The madam reached out her hand, grabbed my hair, and used her strength to drag me forward a few steps. My scalp was gripped tightly and I hissed in pain. The lady forcefully raised her hand. I ate the pain upward to raise half of my body. She smiled contemptuously and flung me to the ground. Before I could react, Madame's pearl-studded embroidered shoes landed on my head. She crushed it hard before saying to me, "Are you the one who seduced the Marquis? Do you know who I am?" "Of course I know. I will never forget it in this life." With tears in my eyes and my entire body trembling lightly, I choked and said, "Madam, I am only an admirer of the Marquis. I would never dare to think of anything I shouldn't." A beautiful woman weeps, and her eyes are watering. Anyone who looks at her will also feel sorry for her. The Marquis' wife, Shen Ryan, was ruthless. She waved her whip and hit me with a snap. The soft whip with barbs cut through the light clothing. Blood beads immediately seeped out. I screamed, wrapped my arms around myself, curled up into a ball and fell to the ground. I don't know how long it took. A furious shout came. Shen Ryan was strangled by the hastily arrived Anping Marquis Zichen's wrist. Zichen pushed him away and unwrapped his cloak, wrapping me up tightly. He looked angrily at Shen Ryan and said dryly, "Have you made enough of a scene?" Shen Ryan's eyes reddened as she pointed at me and scolded, "No. I just want everyone to see what happens to this bitchy hoof seducing you." I sobbed lowly and shrank into Zichen's arms. Chen's arm around me tightened hard, causing a thin layer of sweat to rise on my forehead. He said in a hoarse voice, "Usually, it's because I'm too indulgent with you, making you so unruly and capricious." As soon as the words fell, Chen picked me up in a horizontal hug. Whispers resounded around me. It turned out that the Grand Marquis wife was actually a shrew who couldn't control her own man. After making a scene, not only did she fail to make an example of me, but she also lost face. I let out a low cry and grabbed the lapel of Chen's chest. Chen smothered a laugh and his chest kept trembling. He hugged me and took big steps outside, only leaving Shen Ryan behind, furiously cursing non-stop. I hugged my arm around Chen's neck and rubbed myself intimately. Lying on Chen's shoulder, I revealed a smile towards Shen Ryan, who was a few steps away. "Shen Ryan, is it painful?" "This is just an appetizer. What is owed to me is not so easy to pay off." Chen ransomed me. I became the only concubine of the Anping Marquis. Chen stayed in my courtyard 20 days a month. The remaining 10 days he only rested in the study. Anyone with eyes could see that Chen was angry with Shen Ryan. The maids are all saying, "Don't look at me now," but as long as the lady lowers her head, the Marquis will throw me far away. I don't really care. After eating the dish for more than 10 years, even if I get tired of it for a while, I still like it. Fruity. On this day, Chen had his evening meal in my courtyard. The big maid beside Shen Ryan ran in crying. Repeatedly said, "Marquis, quickly go and see Madam. Madam is not good." Chen stood up in a flash. The chair was knocked over by him. The next moment he was striding out the door, even jogging behind him. I sent Chen out of the courtyard gate and sat down at the table again. Clipped a chopstick of shredded tripe into my mouth and chewed. The maid, Zhu Yao, looked at my face and hesitated for a moment before she lowered her voice and asked, "Mrs. Yu, why don't you stay with the Marquis?" I let out a light laugh and didn't answer. My persona is that of a soft and attentive concubine. What's there to stop? It's not like it's Chen's favor I'm after. I was more concerned about what would happen to Shen Ryan next than that vain thing. The concubine with half a month of scenery and the main wife who has been with each other for more than 10 years. Anyone would choose. I don't know if it was authorized by someone or if the subordinates saw the wind in their sails. The number of servings in my courtyard has plummeted. The meat dishes that are dripping with oil and the vegetarian dishes with scattered green leaves are needless to say. In the dead of winter, my courtyard only got a basket of the most inferior charcoal. Zhu Yao's eyes reddened and she wanted to go and argue with the steward. They're just a bunch of people who give out food at the drop of a hat. I rubbed Bamboo Shake's head in amusement and said with a smile, "If it's cold at night, we'll just sleep together. Why do we have to waste our breath with them?" Chen hadn't been here for a while. I lay on the rattan rocking chair under the porch and drifted off to sleep. The supervising sister of Shen Ryan's courtyard came in aggressively. She slapped a thick stack of scriptures on the table. In a cold voice, she said to me, "From today onwards, you will be in the courtyard copying scriptures for the Marquis to pray for blessings." I answered without much expression. Presumably, there was a senior person behind it. Shen Ryan changed the method of torturing me. I was brought to the small Buddha hall. There was no fire pit, no hand stove. Even taking in a breath felt cold in my chest. The governing sister was high on melon seeds, and after to bah humbugs, she gave a wink to the maids. Immediately, someone came up and stripped off my cloak. The stewardess smiled so much that her eyes narrowed into slits. "How can you ride in an overcoat? Mrs. Yu adores the Marquis and should want to sincerely pray for the Marquis, right?" I didn't refute. My fingertips were so red from the cold that it was hard for me to even crawl. The stewardess sister gathered up the cotton clothes on her body and snickered from the side. "It's not good to freeze your body in this cold winter. Someone, bring a basin of hot water for Beauty Yu." A pot of steaming water was brought in. I took a step back and was just about to open my mouth when two subordinates pressed my shoulders left and right and pressed my hands into the hot water. The pain caused me to shout out. I couldn't stop trembling. My frostbitten hands were pressed dead center into the water basin, and the splashes stained the paper. The stewardess sister came closer and lowered her voice. "Beauty Yu, don't blame me either. Who made you offend madam? The only person you can look up to in this mansion is the Marquis. So what if the Marquis isn't around? It's easier for madam to want your life than to crush an ant." I begged for mercy. The door was kicked open. The wind poured in, wrapped in snow particles. Chen gritted his teeth as his face darkened and asked, "I'd like to see how you want to take her life." The subordinate who was pressing down on me unloaded his strength. My legs went limp and I fell to the ground. Chen shouted, "Jiao Niang." I got up and jumped into his arms, looking up at him with my face tilted up, unable to stop the tears from falling. Chen cupped my hand and gently rubbed it. I tugged at the corners of my lips, raised a smile, and said to him, "Marquis, I'm fine, it's just tainted paper. Can I still pray for your peace?" As soon as the words left my mouth, I collapsed softly. Chen stretched out his arm and swept me up by the waist. 3 half asleep, half awake. I seemed to hear the sound of the government doctor lamenting. and the sound of Chen roaring furiously. I frowned and told them to shut up. At that moment, my mother's voice rang out, her index finger pressed against her lips, and she shushed. "Aki, I'll be good, hide, no matter what happens, don't come out." I cried and kept shaking my head, wanting to go out. Mother pressed my head and shoved me into the closet. She closed the closet door and put a padlock on the outside. Outside the door, my father's pleading voice kept shouting, my lord, I was wrong, we don't want this silver." An unfamiliar male voice sounded. "If you want to blame it on the fact that you have offended someone you shouldn't have. The wife of the Marquis of Anping is also someone you can blackmail." Father kept kowtowing, banging his head. Mother is crying. "We don't have any. These 10 taels are the compensation for the seedlings that the nobleman stepped on." The man laughed and said, 10 taels? Do you think the Bodhisattva came down to earth to do good deeds? These 10 taels are the money for selling your lives." My parents wanted to say something else, but the sound of a sword cutting through flesh rang out. I covered my mouth with both hands. I didn't dare to let out a single sound. Until the closet doorway through the faint light, the man turned the house into a mess before leaving. I slapped my hands on the door and hissed, Mother, open the door." No one responded. I slapped my hands until my palms were swollen, but no one paid any attention to me. The door cracked open when I slapped it, so I adjusted my position and kicked it open. When I came out, I fell to the ground and crawled on my hands and knees for a few steps before stumbling out. Blood and mud mixed together. Dad and Mom had been slashed from their left shoulder to their lower right abdomen. The white flesh was turned out. I fell to my knees and with trembling hands gathered my mother into my arms. Large tears rolled down and hit Mother's face. "Mother, get up. Mother, get up." Akio is scared. Normally, if I bumped, my parents would be distressed for half a day. But now my voice was hoarse from crying, and my parents were still lying motionless. In the daytime, my mother joyfully held 10 taels of silver and said, "Your people are really kind. I thought to give a few words and forget about it. But I didn't expect to give 10 taels. 10 taels, 10 taels. It's enough to make a new dress for our Akio, and there's still half of it left. Mother, I don't want new clothes. I just want you back." But my parents can't come back. I'm a wild child without a father or a mother. I won't use the 10 taels of silver. Sold all the family's grain stocks for the money to bury my parents. The yellow soil was cupped and the swana shook the sky. After I kowtowed at my parents' graves, I turned around and went into the greenhouse. In a trance, I seemed to hear my mother say, "Akio, be good, don't go to sleep, you have to live well." I woke up in a ghostly state. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw Chen. His eyes were black and blue. Before I could say anything, tears were falling down my face. Chen panicked. He raised his hand to wipe my tears and hurriedly opened his mouth to comfort me. "Jiao Niang, as long as you get well, it's still possible." I laughed again as I cried. With my face pressed against his palm, I gently shook my head. As long as Marquis remembers Jiao Niang, it's because Jiao Niang is greedy and always wants to accompany the Marquis. That's why Madame taught me the rules. It is Jiao Niang who is wrong. He said, "It's not you who are wrong." Then who was wrong? I think he already has the answer in his heart. Marquis Anping has been married for 3 years, and I am his only concubine. Can't the lady still tolerate it? I buried myself in Chen's arms and cried so hard that my body kept trembling. Chen's large palms smoothed down my back one by one. Outside the door, Shen Ryan shouted with a sobbing voice, "Brother Chen, I didn't know, I didn't mean it. Have you forgotten? You said you would be with me for a lifetime." I looked at Chen with my bloodless face, my eyes full of grief. Chen looked at me with downcast eyes, the blood color in his eyes turning over. He helped me lie down again. He whispered a few words of comfort before going out. I heard him say in a cold, hard voice, "Shen Ryan, how dare you be such a vicious person? You told me that it was just a moment of jealousy that caused you to lose your temper, and that you would never make things difficult for Jiao Niang again, so I believed you. But what about you? You went so far as to torture her with all means behind my back. It will be hard for her to get pregnant in the future. Are you satisfied?" Shen Ryan kept crying, her voice sobbing. She said, "Brother Chen, I'm afraid that you've really fallen for her. I won't do it again, really, I won't do it again." Chen didn't listen, he kicked Shen Ryan out. Cat crying and fake mercy, "I won't trust you anymore." I pulled my lips and laughed lightly.